If I stay, will you stay? If I go, will you go? If I pay, will you play? Do you know what I know? Do you love, do you hate? Do you care what I say? Is it all just the same? Always make these mistakes. Ooh, baby, take me, play me. All I wanna do is
As the mafia boss, Park Jimin, entered the restaurant, his eyes immediately locked onto the beautiful woman serving drinks. He watched her every move, mesmerized by her grace and poise. His mind began to race with thoughts of making her his own. Unbeknownst to the Jimin, Vian was aware of his presence. However, she maintained her professional demeanor, serving customers with a smile. Jimin couldn't take it anymore. He approached her table, leaning in close. "Excuse me, miss." His voice deep and I couldn't help but notice how stunning you are. My name is Jimin, and I would be honored if you'd allow me to buy you a drink. Vian hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to say. She knew better than to get involved with someone like him, but his charm was undeniable. "I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to accept drinks from customers," she replied, her voice shaking slightly. Jimin smiled, his eyes glinting with determination. "That's a shame," he said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a stack of bills, peeling off a $100 bill and placing it on the table. "But I think you'll find that this covers more than just a drink." Without waiting for a response, Jimin turned and walked away, leaving Vian staring after him in disbelief. She couldn't deny the feeling that she was in over her head, but there was something undeniably alluring about this man. Vian watched as he walked away, her heart racing. She couldn't believe what had just happened. She had never encountered anything like this before. As she gathered her thoughts, she realized that she had to be careful. This man was a mafia boss, and she knew the kind of trouble that could come with being involved with someone like him. Despite her reservations, she found herself drawn to him. His confidence and charm were irresistible. As she continued to work, she couldn't help but think about him. She wondered what he would say if she were to accept his invitation. Would it be the start of something amazing, or would it lead to? The night wore on, and Vian found herself growing more and more restless. She knew that she had to make a decision soon. As she finished her shift and clocked out, she felt a sense of anticipation building within her. She knew that she couldn't ignore the pull any longer. She had to see where this would lead her. As Vian walked out of the restaurant, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She glanced over her shoulder but didn't see anyone suspicious. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out onto the sidewalk and started walking towards bus stop. Suddenly, a black limousine pulled up beside her. The tinted windows revealed nothing but darkness inside. With a nervous laugh, she told herself that it was just her imagination. But when the back door swung open, revealing Jimin's familiar face, she knew that she couldn't ignore this anymore. "Get in," he commanded, his voice broken, no argument. She hesitated for a moment before climbing into the luxurious vehicle. As the door closed behind her, she felt a sense of both excitement and dread washing over her. She knew that this was a game she was playing, but she couldn't help but be drawn to the thrill of it all. The limousine pulled away, and they drove off into the night. Ryan couldn't help but wonder where they were going and what would happen when they got there. A part of her was terrified, but another part was exhilarated. She knew that she was in over her head, but she couldn't resist the pull of this enigmatic man. The limousine drove through the city streets, the lights reflecting off the glass and creating a sense of mystery within the vehicle. Ryan sat silently, her heart racing as she tried to read Jimin's intentions. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was in over her head, but she also couldn't deny the attraction she felt towards him. As they drove, Jimin broke the silence. "I hope you don't mind. I took the liberty of having your address traced," he said, his voice smooth, "and I wanted to take you somewhere special." Ryan swallowed hard, trying to hide her nervousness. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. "You'll see," he replied, his eyes glinting in the dim light. "Just trust me." As the limousine pulled up to a grand mansion on the outskirts of the city, Ryan's heart raced in her chest. She knew that she was in trouble, but she couldn't deny the thrill of the situation. Jimin stepped out of the car and opened her door, offering his hand to help her out. She hesitated for a moment before taking it, feeling the warmth of his skin against hers. "After you," he said, gesturing for her to lead the way. She walked up to the grand entrance, her heels clicking against the marble floors. As they entered the foyer, she was taken aback by the opulence surrounding her. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and priceless artwork adorned the walls. "This way," Jimin said, leading her down a long hallway. He opened a door, revealing a lavishly decorated dining room. Soft music played in the background and candles flickered around the room, casting warm shadows on the walls. "Dinner is served," he said, gesturing to a table. Ryan took a deep breath as she walked over to the table, her heart pounding in her chest. She hadn't expected such luxury, and she couldn't deny the excitement coursing through her veins. As she sat down, she noticed the exquisite food laid out before her. It was a feast fit for a king, and she couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. "This is amazing," she said, looking up at Jimin. He smiled, taking a seat across from her. "I thought you deserved the best," he replied, reaching for her hand across the table. She hesitated for a moment before placing her hand in his, feeling the warmth of his skin against hers. "I'm not sure what to say," she admitted, taking a sip of drink. "This is all so sudden." "I couldn't help but be drawn to you. You have a strength and..." about you that I find irresistible," he said, his voice low and as they ate and the tension between them grew. They spoke of their lives and their ambition, despite the she knew was lurking around the corner. She couldn't help but feel a deep connection with Jimin. He was like no one she had ever met before, and she found herself falling under his spell. As the evening drew to a close, Jimin stood up, pulling her to her feet. He took her in his arms. She could feel his heart racing against hers, and she knew that she was in too deep. "I want you," he whispered. Tonight and every night after that. She looked up into his eyes, and for a moment she thought she saw a glimpse of, and in that moment she knew that she had to take a chance. "I want this too," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "But I have to be sure. I need time to think." He nodded, his grip on her losing slightly. "I understand," he said, leading her to the door. "But remember, I am not the kind of man who takes no for an answer." As they stepped out, Jimin turned to face her. He took her hand in his once more, his thumb gently stroking her skin. "I will wait for your answer," he said, leaning forward to kiss her gently on the forehead. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Wyan alone with her thoughts. As she climbed the stairs to her apartment, she made a promise to herself. She would take her time, weigh her options carefully, and make the best decision for her future. She wouldn't be swayed by emotion or fear. She would be strong and she would choose wisely. As she entered her apartment, Wyan sat down on her kitchen table, lost in thoughts. She knew that she couldn't ignore Jimin any longer, but she also knew that she had to be careful. She thought about the risk involved, about the that lurked around the corner, but she also thought about the passion, the excitement, and the promise of something more. She spent hours researching him, trying to understand the world he inhabited. She knew that it was a risky decision, but she also couldn't deny the passion that flared between them when she was with him. After a week of deliberation, Wyan finally made up her mind. She knew what she had to do, even if it meant putting herself in way. With a determined look in her eyes, she stood up, ready to face the consequences of her decision. Wyan took a deep breath and walked towards the mirror. She fixed her hair, put on some lipstick, and adjusted her clothes. She looked at herself in the mirror one last time, trying to calm her racing heart. She knew that this was a decision that could change her life forever, and she had to be brave. With her mind made up, she grabbed her handbag and walked out of her apartment. She didn't know what awaited her at Jimin's, but she knew that she had to face him. When she arrived at the mansion, she took a deep breath and stepped out of the taxi. She walked towards the entrance, her heels clicking against the marble floors. As she reached the grand entrance, she took another deep breath and pushed open the door. She walked up to the foyer, her heart pounding in her chest, and made her way towards Jimin's room. She took another deep breath as she knocked on the door. "Come in." Jimin's voice echoed through the room. She opened the door and stepped inside, her eyes adjusting the dim light. She saw Jimin standing by the window, his back turned towards her. "Jimin," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "I've made a decision." She took a deep breath and turned around, ready to face the consequences of her decision. Jimin turned around slowly, his eyes locking onto hers. He took a step towards her, his expression unreadable. "And what decision is that?" he asked, his voice low and Wine took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. "I want to be with you." Jimin's eyes widened in surprise, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "And you're sure about this?" he asked, his voice still cold. "Yes," she replied, her voice trembling. I am." "Now," Jimin replied, his voice low, and we begin our journey together. As Jimin reached out to take her hand, Wine felt a rush of anticipation coursing through her veins. She was well aware that she was playing a game, but she couldn't ignore her deep attraction towards him. A sympathy of desire and longing that ignited their souls. Despite the risk involved in being with Jimin, she was strongly drawn to him, and she had no way to ignore it. She knew that they were walking a thin line, but she also couldn't ignore the passion that between them. In the arms of, she found an unexpected peace, and in each other, the strength to face the unknown.
내 맘대로 양심을 낼 수 있어 이 말